I think you have to think about Watson as a very sophisticated machine language tool. So if you really think about AI and how it's come together, you can think about machine learning, you can think about artificial intelligence, and you can think about cognitive computing. And Watson has really achieved this area of cognitive computing where Watson is helping augment decision making that humans make. So I think when you look at the business problems that you're trying to solve as an agency, whether you're doing it for yourself as an agency as a business or whether you're doing it on behalf of customers, the question is, can Watson or our cognitive tools help you aid in the decision making? And I think in the marketing world right now, specifically in the programmatic world, I do think there is a very, very big role for a tool like Watson to help in that decision making around what is the appropriate buy. Number one, understanding where placement is and finding the person. But more importantly, what is the creative abilities and what is the best creative to actually serve to that individual to create a value exchange between the individual and the brand. And I don't think that that area has been tapped into very well yet.
So on the programmatic side, on the media planning, how do you see sort of the utility of Watson versus what we know now from a somewhat grown, matured programmatic ecosystem?
Yeah, so look, I think we have to first start with Andy, and you and I, we've all been frustrated. We only really have access to 20% of the world's data right now. So there's about 80% of the world's data that we don't have access to. And what a tool like Watson does and allows a media planner to do is get into this unstructured data, the dark data, the videos, the imagery, the conversations that people are having, so that you can take not only the structured data, or the 20% of the data that we all know very well and we've been using for many, many years, but you can also tap into that other 80% of the data to get a better profile of an individual, so therefore you can actually target and serve them up value-based ads better than ever before. So it's an interesting inflection point for us right now, because I do think that Watson learns around unstructured data. And the more that Watson learns around that unstructured data, the better performance you get from Watson, combining it with the known 20% data. And where we've tested it just on ourselves at IBM, we've seen something like a 30 or 35% conversion rate on people actually interacting with our ads or wanting to learn more about IBM. So again, it goes back to the basics, right? It goes back to the basics of what information do I know about this individual? What kind of value do I want to provide to that individual? The higher the value exchange that I have, the more likely someone's going to want to interact with my brand. And I think we haven't really tipped that scale yet. And I think that's the opportunity right now for cognitive computing.
So let's talk about the creative side. And we hear a lot about creative optimization and sort of the whole idea of reaching a consumer with a bespoke ad.
Yeah.
What is the opportunity in general, and how do you see Watson playing a role there?
Yeah, so look, I think there's the basics. The basics are knowing that somebody is living, contextual relevance, right? Knowing that somebody's living in Florida versus they're living in Iceland, right? We're going to serve them different advertising based on contextually relevant information that we have. And that's, I think, the basics. But I will suggest to you, a lot of brands haven't even tapped into that yet, okay? So it's taking your first-party data, it's taking third-party data like the weather company, so you know where someone is, their location-based data, and then serving them up some kind of relevant context around that data. Now, I think you start to talk about AI, and you start to talk about artificial intelligence and cognitive computing, and what we can do now is we can actually tap into individuals that are in similar areas to understand what the behaviors are within that social economic environment. And we can then start bringing in relevant advertising and relevant creative into the process. So at a very basic level, instead of serving someone a blue ad, we can serve them a red ad, because the red ads we know work contextually more relevantly in that geo area. Or that we know that area of people are much more interested in soccer than they are with American football, because we know on their Facebook profiles that that's a propensity of the folks that are there. Or we look into their Instagram accounts and we see that their Instagram images are all around soccer, not around American football. So you basically want to send them ads that have some relevance to do with soccer versus American football. So when you start to bring in this unknown data, or we call it the dark data, into the mix so that we target better, you can actually get really, really very creative around that. Now the other thing is, we also have the optimization effect, where you can use cognitive computing to optimize the ads that are there. So you may want to serve them a blue ad for a period of time. If that doesn't work, then serve them a red ad. And you can do it at scale. Right now, we're always limited to sort of an A/B test, right? Versus a scale test. Instead of testing only 40 images, why not test 400 images and optimize on that creative thing, on the creative placement of that ad? And I think those are the opportunities that we're just starting to scratch the surface of. And kudos to a lot of some of the programmatic companies that are out there now, because they're starting to ask those questions. They're taking their algorithms and they're starting to put machine learning on top of their algorithms, which will allow them to do that.
And what about performance and how that's measured and what you guys bring to that area?
Yeah, so for our own use, we've seen when we start to apply cognitive technologies and machine learning, we start to see in the range of 30 or 35% interaction rate with someone. Now in the B2B world, it's a lot harder to know whether or not you actually made that sale. There's a lag there for us. But as long as we know the engagement rate has gone up, that's a really good proxy, whether someone wants to schedule a consult with our consulting firm GBS, or whether somebody wants to download our product to try and buy for free, which is our SPSS statistics offer right now. But those kind of interactions give you a very, very high signal that there's a buying propensity there. And we've seen those rates go up about 30 or 35% while we start to apply cognitive data and cognitive skills into our targeting process. So I think the ROI is going to be pretty obvious, because what cognitive tools allow you to do is to set up logical algorithms that you can test and try and buy. And it's almost the nirvana of what we've always talked about. It's just now the components of machine learning have gotten into bite-sized pieces. So no longer does it cost you millions and millions of dollars to use machine learning and AI technologies within your algorithms. As a strong data scientist or developer, you can go into our Bluemix platform, for example, and our IBM cloud platform, and you can pull down Watson APIs, and you can apply those APIs to help you in your decision making and in your algorithm.